I want to do an example of trying to create a truth table for a given statement. So here I've been asked to construct the truth table for it is not true that P or not Q. So in order to do that, the real key is I'm going to need the truth table for any connective that appears in my statement. So I'm going to need the not truth table. And I'm also going to need the disjunction truth table, the or truth table. Oops, so I want P, Q, P or Q. Now, you won't have to recreate these every time you use them, of course. You can simply have them written down and then refer to them every time you need them, until you get a good feel for, yeah, I don't really need to look at that. Okay, now, in order to make a truth table, I need to know a few things before I get started. I'm going to need 2 to the n rows, where n is the number of unique simple statements here. My only simple statements are P and Q, so 2, P and Q is 2 to the second. I'm going to need 4 rows. Alright, so I'm going to make a truth table. I'm going to make one with 4 rows. I'm going to put lots of things in that truth table. So I'm going to draw the skeleton of it this way, or in blue here. I've got P, I've got Q. In order to figure out what this whole thing is, I'm actually going to need some intermediary steps. I need to know what not Q is, so I need a not Q column. I'm going to need to know what P or not Q is, and then finally I'm going to need to know what not P or not Q is. Those are all of the things that I need to find in order to make this full truth table. Okay, I also need my values of Q and P filled in. So Q will be true, false, P will be true, true, false, false. And the way that I do that is I always start all the way on the rightmost variable and just alternate. Then I go to the next one and double, so 2 instead. If I had a third one, I double again to 4 trues and 4 falses. But here's my setup. Man, that's a terrible looking Q right there. I don't know that I helped it. Okay. So this is the key. This is how this works. In general, if someone asks me to make a truth table, they'll probably give me this much at least. So they'll give me the setup, they'll give me the steps I need to make maybe. But it's good to talk about doing those every time, just in case you want to make your own truth table. Now, here's the key. I want to figure out what goes underneath Q, not Q. I want to do this column of my truth table. So to do that, I'm going to look at my table for negation, because I'm trying to find not Q, and then I'm going to look at this column, because that's the column that I'm working from. So, as I look at that column and as I look at not Q, or my table for negation, here under Q I have a true, I want not that. This table says not true is false, so I'm going to put a false here. Okay, now I go to my next one. I have a false here. My table says if you have a false, not that is true, so I get a true. And then I have a true here. My table says if you've got true, not that is false. And I've got a false here. My table says if you have a false, not that is true. Okay, so not Q's column is just the opposite of the Q column. just going to get rid of all this extra stuff that I did here and fill this in. Not true is false, not false is true, not true is false, not false is true. Okay, so I just used those, the truth table for not and the Q column to get that not Q column. Now what I'm looking at is I want this column. I want the disjunction, so I'm going to be looking at my OR table. But I forgot to finish filling in. I'm going to look at my OR table, and I'm going to look at the column for P and the column for not Q. I'm going to take the OR of these two columns to find P or not Q. Oh, that made it highlight even more. How exciting. Okay, so let's start. I want to figure out, I've got P is true, Q is false. I want true or false. This table tells me that true or false is true, so I should put a T here. Now I go to my next row. I have P is true, Q is true, so I look at my truth table for true, or for the disjunction. That's this row, true or true is true, so this should be a T. And then I look at my next values in the next row. I've got false or false. This says false or false is false, so I'm going to put an F here. And then in the last row, I've got false or true, so I look over here, false or true is true, and I'm going to put a T right here. Okay, that's where those are coming from. Now let's clear off this junk. Oh, I can't undo any farther than that. Well, that's a real bummer. However, let's fill those values back in. So this was true or false is true, true or true is true, false or false is false, false or true is true. All right, I only have one column to go. And this last column is my answer. This is what completes my truth table. It'll tell me how these things are related. So I look at this last column, and I see that it is the negation of this column I just did. So I just need to take the opposite of those values. So not true is false. Not true in the next row is false. Not false is true. And not true is false. And here is my truth table for it is not true that P or not Q. And I'm trying to give myself a little room here to write because I want to note something about this table. Just like my tables for conjunction, disjunction, negation, this table now lets me interpret that statement. Not P, or it is not true that P or not Q. What's remarkable about it? Well, not P or not Q is only true when P is false and Q is true. That is the only spot where that is a true statement. So to interpret this, the only time that that is true is when I have P being false and Q being true. So hopefully that's a good first example for you of a truth table. More to come, certainly, but there's kind of the basic idea.